So firstly, I wanted to introduce the session and the speakers. So today's session is on how gamification and structured change management can work together to revolutionize your organization's sustainability efforts. So today we're going to be showcasing two gamification tools, which some of you may be more familiar with the first one, which is Climate Fresk. Some of you, the others of you may know the biodiversity collage. Both are about engaging teams, raising climate awareness through interactive methods. But crucially today, as well as having these gamification tools, we're also going to be talking about how to build on that initial engagement that you will have developed through your teams using the pure change management methodology. So how do you translate those insights into lasting, actionable sustainability strategies? So the core message really today that you're going to come out with is about how combining that gamification engagement, how you combine that with structured change management can create a powerful tool for you to really create change, to create really positive sustainability outcomes into your organizations. And we've got three speakers today. The first is Caroline Vieno, and she brings deep expertise in sustainability and climate education. She's the president of the board for Climate Fresh in the UK, and she's been working with over 1,000 or more individuals across Europe, the UK, Africa, through these gamification sessions. And she's been working with across corporations, NGOs, universities, communities to drive that change. And secondly, I'm really delighted that we have joining us Caroline Bonke, who is going to be bringing a very sort of practical perspective. She's the global strategic planner at Wavemaker, which is part of WPP, and she's actively currently integrating tools like Climate Fresh with into her own organization, and she's going to be sharing real world insights with us, the real sort of practical implications of how you bring these into your teams and how do you develop them in really fast-paced global environments like WPP. So really excited about that. And thirdly, I've got my my fellow director at Pure, Anna Alonso, and she specializes in strategic change management. Her expertise lies in bridging that critical gap between the sustainability strategy and engagement and implementation. And she's going to be taking us through her thoughts on that. So I hope that you'll leave today's session with a real insight into the gamification strategies, but also then practical guidance on how do you bring that into your organization, and to have some success stories along the way so that you've seen how other people have done this. And then we're obviously going to be going into Q&A, and so you can really dig a bit deeper into what are those practical applications. But before we dive in, I wanted to quickly introduce Pure to you. So my name's Millie Hutchinson. I am one of the directors at Pure, founding directors, and I wanted to just take literally just 1 or 2 minutes to tell you a little bit about Pure. So we're hosting the session today. Our tagline is where business meets sustainability, as you can see. And for me, this really sums up what we're about. We're about helping businesses to embed sustainability where it matters most across strategy, culture, and operations. And what makes us different is that we're 4 directors who've set up Pure. We're all business leaders primarily, each with 25 years plus experience, working at the top of business. And we always start with that business need first and combining that insight with then creativity, change management, and all the tools to really make that change within organizations. If you can move on to the next slide. We don't see sustainability as separate from business. Very much we link it directly to growth, managing risks, creating long-term value, and building stronger, more resilient businesses. Our approach looks at how sustainability creates value from every angle for every stakeholder, and actively contribute to your business success. So the last slide from me is our 4 elements framework. This really makes it simple for people. The air represents direction, defining vision and strategy. Then we go around, and earth forms our foundations, embedding sustainability into governance and creating roadmaps. Fire is driving activation, and for me this is really where the magic happens, and this is what you're going to hear today. This is what you're going to hear from Anna, which is really about that change management, and as I say, that magic for me. And then the 4th bit is water. That's our value element, and how do we add value through communications, partnerships, unlocking new opportunities. So as we head into the next slide, this is just one of the events we're running this week. We've run 2 events on strategy and purpose earlier in the week for part of Climate Action Week, and we've got one more session tomorrow on change management. So do join us for that. We have recordings if you'd like them. But I'm going to go straight on now and get into it, and I'm going to introduce our first speaker. We'll invite our first speaker, Caroline Viono, to talk to us about what is Climate Fresh. Thanks very much. Over to you, Caroline.
Thank you so much, Millie. So before we go into Climate Fresh and Biodiversity Collage, and you can see the logos here, I'm going to talk for a little while about gamification. What does it mean to use gamification in learning, in education? Basically, there is nothing new about gamification. It's been going on for thousands of years. The Egyptians already were using gamification with the kids of the scribes. In ancient Egypt, we were using gamification. In ancient China, sorry, we were using gamification through a game called Go to engage kids to think about strategy. In Greece, Platon and Plato and his fellow, what's his name, Aristotle, were really in favor of gaming as part of the education of kids. Why gamification? Because through gamification, we make learning more engaging and more fun. In his book, Johann Huizinga reinforced the idea, and that's mid-century, last century, reinforced the idea is that playing is a primary need for the human condition. We like playing. So if you emphasize the playing to engage people in doing something that is about learning, you have more chance to succeed. Why does it work? Because it's more interactive. It's less scary when you learn than reading a book on your own. Often when you play, you've got instant feedback because you know if you're right or if you're wrong. So it makes learning easier, correction easier. It's not about testing. It's not about sitting on your own and trying to understand things. It's making connection with a group. It could be very motivating because sometimes when you think about gaming, you think about competition. People hold scores. So in our case, with those workshops, we don't really encourage competition, but not in the sense of you don't and you don't, you know, you don't know. More competition about trying to push yourself a bit forward in terms of timings, go faster than the next group, or make more drawings than the next group. This is the kind of competition, and people respond really nicely to it. What is important with gamification, unless you're really obsessed with game, is it is okay to fail. We all have friends that get really nervous about not winning. Here, in the context of education, it really is okay because we don't keep track of who has the best answers or not. And then as you play, as you go along the play, you learn. So you assimilate concepts as you go. It's a lot easier than reading a big book and trying to remember what you've read the next day. So if we go to the next slide, I'm now going to go into Climate Fresh. So how did and why did gamification came into climate change? Simply because, as we all know, it is a depressing, very complicated subject matter. So when the creator of Climate Fresh decided to play with cards and to entice his audience to place the cards in order of cause and consequences, they actually start enjoying the really complicated concept of climate change. My background is in advertising and marketing. I am not a climate scientist. So for me, gamification is all about telling a story. It's all about reframing the science in a more palatable and digestible way. It's all based on complex scientific concepts. But what we do is we make it accessible, and through a game of collaboration, and as it said, that's the next point, people can play and get their hands dirty, but no one feels bad or worse or better than another because everybody collaborates. And all this while, if you're aware of the IPCC report, reviewing super complicated cards that most of us would run the other direction if we were given one. One of the questions is, does it really work? And what we say is actually it does work, because what's played back to us is I feel empowered. I had not understood the impact. You made it really simple for me to understand something that until now I didn't even want to contemplate. And what we've also noticed through research that we can talk about later is how we enable people to start doing things against climate change, start taking actions in their life and in their work. So if we go to the next slide. Just a little bit of a dive into Climate Fresque. Climate Fresque started, the idea was to really be an activist movement. We want everybody around the world to understand climate issues so that they can start taking actions as soon as possible. And this hasn't changed. We do it as volunteers, we do it as professionals. The volunteers are only often do it as volunteer and they have less experience. People like me and equivalents have spent hours and hours in learning on how to talk to companies to engage them with that tool. So I think we have a little video to give you more of an insight on what Climate Fresque is. Anna is our magician behind the tech.
This is it.
Are you ready?
Face the climate emergency.
Time is running out.
We need to act now. To understand why and how society needs to change,
we need education.
or should we say, climate education. And guess what? We have a plan.
The Climate Fresque is a science-based and collaborative workshop recommended by researchers, politicians, and business leaders that aims to make people understand the causes and consequences of climate change. 3 hours, 42 cards, 1 facilitator, and magic happens. Over the past 2 years, this game has grown exponentially around the world, convincing of 150,000 people and 6,000 facilitators in 45 countries, and it's just the beginning.
Imagine if we could educate millions of citizens around the world to understand the science behind climate change and realize there are no other options than changing society to avoid catastrophe. Climate is changing, so can we. Are you in?
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. So this is an old video. A little later, we are going to look at the real numbers of people that we've been playing the fresque to around the world. Before that, I want us to go back into the pedagogy and why does it work? How does that gamification really makes a difference? So I think we need to go back to the slide. If you go one slide higher, no, okay, that one, yeah, next one. So basically 3 hours, as you saw in the video. The first part is the game of cards. Your hand dirty, collectively place the card, have fun doing it, start discovering that the story is more dramatic than ever. And really, we see at that stage what we call the haha moment. We go from, yes, it's really jolly, we are here to play a game of cards, to God, that is a really depressing story. And we then, the magic of the tool is that you take people really low and you lift them back up. And when I say we've got some really strong professionals, the key of the success of your workshop is to really lift people back into action. If you leave them thinking that climate change is a sad story, they are never going to do anything about it. What you need to do is you need to lift them and get them in a place where they will start doing something tomorrow. So it's called the hand. You play the game. The heart is you have to connect with your emotion. Emotions drive action. And finally, you have to come up with solutions. We don't tell people what to do. We inspire them. We show them different visuals, but actions have to come from what they think they can do in their own lives, reality, responsibility, jobs, no matter where they sit on the ladder. So we can probably go to the next one. And then, yeah, sorry, so this is really, first phase is I understand the problem. You cannot change something if you don't understand what it is. We make it really simple, easy to connect to. That's the game. Then you absorb your learning. You put on the fresque, you start drawing, you start writing equations if you're in a science degree. You start writing words. We've got all sorts of ways of expressing ourselves. And this is really about assimilating, really retaining some of that information. Then talking about our emotions. And finally, we sit around a table for an hour to an hour and a half. And we discuss as a group. So the photo that I've put here is quite interesting. It was last week. And one of our panelists was supposed to join us today from Cirset. And this is the photo of the Cirset guys thinking about, and this is the management team. We have here the CEO and the top management. This is here a bunch of guys that have never spoken about sustainability in that manner. They came from a very low place in phase 3. And in phase 4, they were thinking, what can we do in our company to go faster than we currently are? And I think that was really, it's only sad that Lise can't join us today. So the proof is in the pudding. If we go to the next one, on your video, I think it mentioned 150,000. We are at 2.2 million around the world. Okay, we've been translated in over 55 languages. And in the UK alone, I think we've reached the 43,000 bar yesterday. And Caroline and Caroline here, Lise from Circe, and a lot of other persons, and maybe even more, even in our audience, may be part of that 2.2 million people. Then the next one, I can't remember what I'm supposed to say for the next one, but I think it's Aura, that lady Aura. Thank you for sharing. You've been on a fresque. So as I said, it started with climate fresque. It got very, very popular very quickly. The format, the pedagogy really triggered things. So when you were coming from a different place than climate change, if you were coming from circularity, biodiversity, if you wanted to talk about clothes, waste, then people came up with their own fresque, their own collage. So biodiversity is another example using the same methodology, but the focus here is not on climate, it's on our biodiversity loss. So you first reconstruct the ecosystem by organizing your cards, then you make a piece of art, and then you debrief and you think about actionable things that you can do in your life to prevent and to mitigate or to stop those 5 pillars of loss of biodiversity, the 5 key causes for loss of biodiversity, trying to prevent what we often refer to as the 6 mass extinction. So I think we've gone around the pedagogy, and it's time we move on to our guests.
That's great. Thank you so much, Caroline. It's brilliant, and it's really impactful to see the scale of Climate Fresque as well. How many people have been involved? I took part in one last month, and I have to say it was a brilliant sort of way to really get under the skin of climate change. Now I'd like to bring in our Caroline Banquet to share her real-world experience. If you remember that she's coming from WPP, and to really understand what the challenges that we'd like to understand the challenges that you were facing when you decided to do this, how you use Climate Fresque, what results you've seen critically, and which areas of the organisation. Obviously WPP is huge, so which part of the organization you reached, and so where are you now? Over to you, Carolyn.
Thank you so much. So how it started, we've had, like I think a lot of other companies, some element of training around sustainability over the past years, because it's been a topic, I think, which is, been something important across many industries. What we experienced for like quite a classic format of training, which is, you do it by yourself, you absorb your sort of like a learning, but then I think it was falling a little bit flat in terms of like what happens next. So at across the WPP, we have different teams that we call the ECG, so the employee community groups. So we have one which we have a few which are we call the green team. So I'm part of it, and so we were trying to think about like ways to engage people around the sustainability topic and what we could do as an industry. So we're already starting to talk a lot about decarbonization in media, for instance, but it still felt that it was a topic limited to quite a few people. Like the happy few are already quite interested in the topic and passionate about pushing it. But if you really want to drive change, you need to engage more people across an organization. So we heard about the climate fresque. We're quite curious to hear about it, to experience it. I have to frame that we're at the very beginning of the journey. But the way it's happened so far is we ran the fresque, the workshop a couple of times. So Caroline came to our offices to run it with every time with a group of people coming from green teams or from with a sustainability focus in their existing roles. So people who were coming in with a bit of I already know quite a bit about it. How much am I going to get out of it? And what was quite amazing was, of course, we learned lots through the whole fresque. So even if you think you already know quite a lot, there is so much in it. It's really not time wasted. But I think the most important element for us was to come up as a group. So we don't all work together on a daily basis. We of course, sustainability is something which matters to all of us in the room when we did the training. But what was amazing was we were learning together, and the format of the fresque means that you have to collaborate. It works as a group, and by collaborating, you create this connection. And what was amazing to see was like how this training room became a safe space, because it's a topic which is heavy. It's a topic on which we have opinions, sometimes that we don't feel comfortable voicing in a professional context. We're not trained to talk about how things make us feel at work, and how we connect what we do for a living with some of the issues which are out there, where we usually don't have this kind of conversations, and you wouldn't have them in a sort of a classic training setup. And by having this very safe space, the connections we created as a group were quite interesting and new. At least that's how we experienced them, because then it makes you think about things in a different way and make you talk about what's next in a different way. So everybody had had to let their guard down and feel like sort of everybody felt like really comfortable speaking freely, which is really unusual, as I was saying. And in terms of what it was for us, it was like really going on a journey as a team, not as individuals, which sometimes, we know what the problem is. We know that change needs to happen, but then you fall a bit short about like, how do you bring it? What does that mean? How do you move things within, your own company or your own industry? And by your, we know that sustainability is about collaborating. You don't find a solution by yourself in a corner. So where we are now, it's something that, so we did the first fresque and we did a second one to make sure like more people across your organization knew about it. And so now it's been identified as a very, very important tool as part of the toolbox that we have for learning and development across the group when it comes to sustainability. The people we've started interacting with and making sure that we were looping in were people from our learning and development team, because especially in large organization, you need to find the right canals and ways to push things forward. So we're hoping to be able to start training people internally, so people who've already been on the Fresk, and to get a few more people experiencing the format, and then put a rolling plan together. But I would say that making sure that we have all the right people who are already engaged in the topic, and then having what I would call like the operational force with us, which is here the L&D team, because they know how to roll out trainings internally, and they can help prioritize it and making it something that people, especially stakeholders, go behind is really important. So that's how we are at the beginning of our journey, and we're hoping it's going to be like a very positive one. But I have to say it's a training that has brought a lot of energy and hope across the core group that we can actually make a meaningful difference.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much, Carolyn. I can see there are some questions coming in. And for me, I think it's really critical that the piece that you mentioned about how you see people speaking freely, which you don't get to see that in usual sort of more formal training sessions. But I'm going to pass over to Anna before we go to questions, and to understand a little bit more how you move from Climate Fresh and the gamification to then how do you translate these into more these complex challenges into more business focused, actionable outcomes. So over to you, Anna.
Hello, everyone. I hope that you can hear me well and that you can see my screen. What I want to do in the next 5 minutes actually is to give you a little bit of some ideas of what you could do when you have basically after you have done Climate Fresh, because my experience as well, for me, it was a boom. Actually, I really found super excited, my organization as well. But after a while, it didn't consolidate. Yeah. So we basically how you can really drive it. And this is important thing that there is the intention of basically of doing more with it. It's not just an awareness tool. It can be really a very action-oriented tool. Yeah. So again, these are some suggestions that we have impured. I mean, there are more. I know we don't have time, but basically, what I feel that that Climate Fresh work really well is in 2 areas of the sustainability cycle so when you start setting direction, and especially it works very well with the leadership team, yeah, and creating first the awareness, because even for people that is working in sustainability, climate change is really complex actually, and we don't know all the nitty-gritties, the interactions and so on. So is a super, I would say, eyes-opening, yeah. So we create that awareness, but we cannot leave it there. Actually, you have to generate the interest, and you want to have the desire of doing something. And there are some mechanisms that we can use to basically create that. What is there for me? Yeah, why I can bring this back. Yeah, so that's in the direction area, as well in the activation area. That is basically in what we call the fire. Actually, how we can bring communities, how we can engage them, and how we can align them to do something. Yeah, and this is where we have seen as well using Climate Fresh and biodiversity. If it is up to me, I think I will start in the direction, because this really involves the leadership team and some of the things, and I will continue and doing as well with the engagement. Yeah, so that's a little bit of the use. And if I may go actually of some examples of what we do to break the gap from what you do with the Climate Fresh or the Biodiversity College, and what you can do. And basically there are 3 things that they are easy to do and you can do. For instance, the first one, a discovery workshop, you can do just after Fresh. Yeah. So you have a couple of hours that you say, okay, right now we have this awareness and we have the interest. Yeah. So what it means for us, what we can bring this into our organization, what is this really aligned with our purpose, how we can bring it into our strategy, and there is any, I would say, win or low-hanging fruit that we can use to start moving it within the organization. The other tool that we use and is super effective in my opinion is a hackathon. It's an activation hackathon around the organization through the different stages of the air, art, fire, and water, and there are different dynamics that we can follow in one day to help basically to align all the stakeholders towards how we can influence how this affect the strategy. So there are activities around basically linking is checking the purpose, checking the vision, the mission, and the values, and creating some activities around how to activate it and start outlining the roadmap. If that is basically the recommendation is to have another day, another session that you could really bring some projects, and it's basically the projects that they are, as I call, the low-hanging fruit of that they are working at a small scale and we can scale, and trying to prove them in a way that is you end this usually 2 days in a way that you have something that you can already implement. And the final tool that I think that is quite interesting is an accelerator. It's a sprint accelerator that is basically focusing on one project. So let's say that you have fresh, you have identified that your supply chain in that particular area needs focus, and basically is creating a usually 2 weeks sprint of how we can align resources and to try to see what we can do during these 2 weeks and how we can progress further. So that's a little bit of a food for thought, or a little bit of an appetizer about what it can be. There is another thing that I wanted to mention with the activation of how you activate teams. I mean, there is... there are quite a lot of techniques that we can really work on. Tomorrow I am running another webinar if you are more interested in the details here, but I am going to really play a video that is going to showcase as well that as well in Game Changer, we have to really think how we can emotionally attract the people. So you can really create the awareness, the interest, and the desire logically, rationally. This is good for me, it makes sense and so on, but as well emotionally. And usually that is the most powerful one. So let me try to share the video. Hopefully it works. Actually, I have to stop and put the audio. Can you see the screen and hear the audio?
Maybe you raise the volume, Elisa?
Is this better? So the problem here is that the people, they were not using the stairs. They were always using the escalator, and they wanted to find a way of how to convince people to do it. The interesting thing is that once that the people start using, most of the people was using it, and it became fun. Okay, and let me go back to my screen. So I hope that this gives you a little bit of a taster, yeah, of what you can achieve if you find alternative ways or out of the box to really engage team. we don't have time to cover this now, but I just want to let you know that change management techniques, they can go not just into these two areas that we have been discussing, but could be from the vision and purpose driven to the innovation funnel as well. So how you change management to with you sustainability innovation. It can work around the foundations as well of how you introduce agility and different techniques to really create and improve the projects. And you do obviously the change management in the preparation of the change and in the change, and as well when you want to continue to create value and how you could move from the today, how we perform better, to the tomorrow, how we transform the company. So there are different techniques around. Let me stop here, actually, and back to you, Millie.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Anna. That was great, and I absolutely loved the video that you showed there. We've heard from our three brilliant speakers, and what it's really great is we've got a few questions that are coming up through the chat. So I'm about to come to those. But seeing as I'm moderating, I think I get the chance to go first with a question. And my question to you is to Caroline Vieno first, I've seen some research on the impact of climate fresk, which shows that people do genuinely change their behaviour and start taking action after they've done a climate fresk session, and I can absolutely vouch from that from a personal perspective as well, having done one recently. But also this research showed that while they're motivated initially, they need ongoing support to sustain those changes. And so just really interested from your experience of running these sessions, do you see that pattern? And how do you think organizations can bridge that gap between the initial excitement to creating lasting change? So, I mean, I don't know, perhaps everyone wants to take that question, but first of all to you, to Caroline, then to Carolyn perhaps, and then Anna, whether you have any thoughts on that before we go to the questions from the group.
So as you can imagine, indeed, when it's about spending money, company says, what's your ROI? And we're talking education and change behavior. So that's very difficult to assess. However, there was a research conducted on two different samples, one that had gone on a climate fresk and one that hadn't, on several climate fresks, because the sample was about just short of 500 people. And it was noticed that post-fresk, in the month after fresk, there was a 30% uptake in actions from those that had attended a fresk versus 9% for those that hadn't. So the engagement is there. The move from feeling to doing is also there for 30% of the participants. But indeed, what we see, and actually I don't see it because I'm not there with the clients 6 months down the road, but what we see is if when you do a fresk, you don't put in place mechanisms to make sure that the actions that people come up with, the ideas that they have, the ambitions, if you don't put actions for them to actually be able to deliver them, whether it's by checking regularly, organizing some working groups, having some follow-up sessions, they will stop. And I often compare reducing your carbon footprint to a diet. And I'm a round person. I've been on a diet all my life, and diet is full of stop and goes. If you do not want to stop, you have to keep at it. So we always tell companies, when you do climate fresk, make sure first it belongs with your strategy and you're doing it for the right reason, not just to greenwash and to do yet another like tick box exercise. And actually, that's one of the feedback of the clients is from Circe that couldn't be here today, is the conversation that it triggered. They want to see the fruits of those conversations. So you have to invest in the after fresk, whether it's through organizations like Pure or whether it's just creating, empowering people to be able to deliver them regardless of where you are in the company, whether it's from the bottom or the top, because you'd be surprised, but some of the ideas and actions that people have delivered after fresk that I've seen a year later when I go back are immense and at different scale. but these people have been allowed to express themselves and to deliver their vision. So I don't know, from Caroline's point of view,
we're at the very beginning of this journey. So to be fair, these are not topics we've really started to tackle.
Yeah.
What about you, Anna? Do you have any thoughts on how to sort of create that long-term impact?
So, I mean, I manage change, and usually the change is something that is imposed to us and usually have sometimes a negative connotation. Yeah. However, with Fresh, you have something that is quite unique because you make the people in really, okay, this is brutal, honestly, but as well, there is a credible hope what we can do. So there is a positive situation. So you channel that a good energy to create and to do something else. And this is very important for the organization. If you do Fresh, to do something else, to really start getting the hands there, it can really increase significantly what I call the human ROI. That is basically how many people is involved, how many people is using it in the project well, talk about it and really expand. So is for me, it's a win situation if you are doing that. Yeah.
Great, thanks for that. My next question, I'm bringing 3 questions from the audience together with my next one, which is for Caroline, and it's very much about your experience at WPP and how do you manage different levels of knowledge that you might have within a group. Obviously some people are going to be hugely experienced and really understand what they're doing, and others it might be their first time. So do you sort people by that? But there's also the sort of build on that is that some people are engaged and others aren't as well. So I think that's also really difficult to manage those different people within a group. And I suppose that's also linked to, is it compulsory? Because if it's compulsory, you are going to have a much wider group of people. Otherwise, if it isn't, it's a bit more self-selecting. It'd be great to get your views.
Yeah. So for the moment, as I was saying, we had run only 2 climate fresks internally. So it's been with people with an interest in sustainability through, through what they do at work or through their involvement in green teams. I would say that for having done a few of these fresks, so a few of these workshops, so whether it's biodiversity collage or anything, with diverse group of people, so outside of WPP, yes, you have people coming with all levels of knowledge and understanding of the topic, but my experience is that the way the game is designed, though the workshop is designed, it does fit with different levels of understanding, and you work there as a group. So you may have in a group people more experienced who actually bring builds or examples or information that benefits the whole group. And as I was saying, it also creates that safe space where it's a topic where we're not supposed to already know to do, as part of our jobs. We're not trained officially. We're not, when you work in advertising, you're not expected to be an expert. So people feel very comfortable asking questions. That's been my experience. So it's not something which is so technical and so difficult that someone who's never heard about climate change and has been in a cave for the past 30 years would not understand. Is it compulsory? No, it's not compulsory. As I was saying, we're at the very beginning of thinking about how we can use it internally. So that has not been a point of conversation. I agree that what works well in this kind of training is when you get scale, and that's one of the elements of conversation internally, is how do we bring that scale? How do we make sure we engage the right people? So then it becomes something that even people who are maybe not as engaged want to join in, and it's definitely something we need to look into.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much. Really great to get your personal experience of that. Now, I'm going to try something actually, because there's a question that's come in from Madeline from within the group, which says, and she says, I'm happy to give some experience on how this has been implemented as a mandatory training, which I think is really interesting. I don't know whether you were able to unmute, Madeline, and do a minute, 30 seconds or a minute. It may not be possible. If not, we'll go on to the next question, and people might want to link in with Madeleine separately. It could be tricky because we're on a webinar setting. Just give you a second just to do that.
Oh, yes. Can you hear me?
We can. Perfect. Go ahead.
Brilliant. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm working on a construction project here in the UK for a French company. And our client pushed us with high expectations on reduction of carbon. So they did their job in a way to push us. So this one of the question was, how do we invite people to actually come to a climate fest? How do we raise awareness? Well, a very good way of doing so is when you have a mandatory obligation from the client, of course. You have, yeah. Perfect. So this was the first incentive. The thing is, when we were going to see everyone on site to try to bring ideas, to try to do actually energy efficiency or so on, or choose better materials or less carbonated materials, nobody was understanding why this was so important, even if it was a KPI coming from the client. So yeah, we thought, okay, we have to explain actually why this is important. That's why the executive team of this project accepted for us to have 450 persons identified and having to attend this as a mandatory training. So we sorted the 450 key people that actually can impact carbon. So I don't know within your organization if such a thing can be identified, but yeah, people who actually can have an impact on carbon for your clients, for within your same organization. And we said it was mandatory, but then depending on who we were talking with, who I'm talking with, I'm kind of picking different arguments for try to push them to come. So usually it's easier with people with families, with kids. They might have a sense of, well, where are we heading to? What is the world I'm leaving to my kids? So then we can already explain a little bit what the climate risk is about, explain that we are in a difficult situation. For the very scientists of us, say that the climate risk is based on the IPCC reports. So IPCC reports are the reports made by the United Nations. This is based on science. And explain that the facilitator won't be a teacher explaining how things should be done. No, no, no. The information is in the cards, and the cards come from the IPCC report, from the United Nations. The facilitator are here for the information to be shared. And actually, this is the feedback that we often get. People like the very, I mean, yeah, the facilitator is not here to say what is good or what is bad. We are here to explain a situation. We are not the message, we are the messenger. And I think this gives also freedom for everyone to feel not judged, but yeah, feel the space to just interact. And then, so another question on how do we practically, how practically this can be implemented. So we run, I think one session could be not run for more than 20 persons at the same time. So one facilitator can have 2 tables, can run 2 tables at the same time. And each table, well, shouldn't be above 6, 7 persons. So 20 people maximum in the room with 2 facilitators, it's a maximum, I would say. It's the maximum we do here. So it does take a lot of time for the facilitators because you have to organize the session, you have to send the invite, book the meeting rooms, make sure everyone is coming. Indeed, it's a 3-hour session, so sometimes people are not really happy to have 3 hours taken in their time. But yeah, here we go with arguments, right, to try to incentive them. And then do communication, communicate on the feedbacks we get that are often positive. Some people say that this has changed their perspective on the future. Yeah, And then there was a last question on, is this game also also adaptable for kids? Yes, it's adaptable for kids. There is a kids version, there is an adult version, a wide public, and there is also a professional version. But yeah, I'm sure Pure can help with this. Yeah, all good for me. Thank you.
That sounds great. So I think you've gone through the questions that were in the chat. Is that right?
Yes, mainly.
Yes.
So then, yep, I was going to ask, so I wouldn't mind just from your perspective, actually, Caroline, as well. Does it have to be 3 hours? And do you do any bigger groups than the, I think it was 6 or 7 that Madeleine mentioned?
It has to be 3 hours. There is a license attached to using Climate Fresk, and it has to be the pedagogy that I showed you, the playing the game, going down in your emotion, we call the haha moment. It's when they understand the penny moment, the penny dropping moment, to the action. This goes into 3 hours. But what we found, first, there's a lot of reluctance. No, it's too long. We can't have 3 hours. There's no way my CEO can give 3 hours to the climate. You know, he's got some real stuff to be doing in his life. Actually, what happened is we end up spending 4 hours, 3.5 hours, 4 hours, because when people start talking about action, I did about 100 people on Monday and Tuesday in this big French company. We were there for 3:15, 3:30 minutes, 3 hours and 30, because they were sitting around the same table for the first time, talking about a subject that they had never talked about. So it actually is better if we have a bit more time and you give people breaks so they don't feel overwhelmed. But most of them at the end, they play back words like, we're empowered, we are on fire, we want to get going tomorrow. The number of people, the best number of people is 14% per people like me. So you have 2 tables of 7, and you get them to compete a bit with each other, to interact, to see who's doing it faster. So that's quite nice. We can go to another table, but the quality is that you have, as facilitator, enough time to engage with everybody. Because the problem is, like in every group, when you're in a group, some people will shy away, some people will shine. And you have to balance everybody so people learn the same thing and participate the same way. It's very inclusive. So we need to learn to say shush to those that talk too much. And please express yourself that talk too little, but have so many more amazing things to say. So I'd say 14 people is the best. We can stretch it to 16, but that would be a maximum.
That's brilliant. I've just seen a question that's come through. That's brilliant. Did you do a quiz Climate Fresk version on site?
Yes, we can do a quiz. And it's really about inviting people to just play some of the cards. But the idea is to really entice them. It's like a little teaser. Come and join the workshop, because what we know is until you open people's chakra fully, and I call that like this because I talk to all these different public, from schools, little 10 years old. We actually went some time ago in Caroline's daughter's school, and I think she's 9 or 10, and now she's put the fresk back at home. When we open their chakra, we really need them to have the time to come and bring ideas. You can't just leave them with the information, because there is no passage from understanding to action. The quiz doesn't allow you that bridge from I understand. You can read an article to I'm doing something about it. It's
Brilliant.
just a way to get people to understand that if they want to play with something really complicated, we've got a 3-hour workshop. So it's a teaser.
Thank you very much. So we're going to end now, because you've actually answered one of the other questions, which was about, is it available for, can you do this with children as well? So the answer is yes, because you've done primary schools. So I just would like maybe a sort of 30 seconds. So that's going to be your challenge, each of you, just to end with, do you have a message to everyone who is on the group? And if we could start with Caroline first, then go to Anna, and then the last 30 seconds to go to Caroline.
Do you mean me or it's me?
So
Okay.
You, Caroline, first.
Yes.
A last message. So I think that it's, you know, climate change is such a heavy topic, and yes, some people may not be engaged, but what the best way to engage people is to start with the low-hanging fruit, is find the people who are engaged in your organization, because they will be the best promoter to any form of training or action, because it is something which gets people quite passionate and fired up. And yes, we may not straight away have all the right people fully on board or fully behind the project, but by having the people who are engaged already and making sure that we use their power, it's the best way to start ignite things internally.
Brilliant. Over to you, Anna.
For me, I would say is that try it and looking at different with an alternative way. I think that it's very important as well that we minimize what we want to achieve. So we go with clear expectations. So as in this month, the Harvard Business Review was saying that if we ask how we can change climate change, it's really very difficult. It's a huge project. But if we go with this thinking, maybe how I can improve this particular thing, so limiting it in a way, I think that we will get by far more results. It will be less scaring, and you will see that the people is more engaging.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Anna. And I'm going to say goodbye as I hand over to Caroline for the last 30 seconds of the session. Please fill in the survey as well. Very much.
Thank you so much. I think the way I want to end up is, if you have the feeling that your company isn't doing enough, isn't making things happen fast enough, engage everybody in your organization, because you would be surprised that good ideas and motivation is with every single one of us. And when we see where climate goes in the last, you know, what the scientists have told us in the last 10 days, and the disengagement around climate change, do not underestimate your staff. If you're in big companies, get everybody to join the conversation, because they will be in the fresque, during the fresque or the collage or any of those games. They will be telling you stuff that they would never tell you in real life. They would never walk into your offices, especially if you have the CEO in the room. Last week, and it's a little anecdote, I fresque a CEO in a company, and the guy owns a helicopter. I keep on laughing about it. He owns a 9-person helicopter. And you would be surprised, but all the management team was drawing helicopters on the fresque about contribution of transport. And I think it humbled him, and he started realizing, maybe my helicopter, I'm probably not going to challenge the reality and keep it, but maybe I could ask myself, what else can I do to support and act against climate change? And I think this was they would have never done it in another context, I'm sure.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope to see some of you at our session tomorrow.